So hopefully you can all see the main slide.
Looks good.
Thank you, Tony. That's Tony Rees, who's one of our co-chairs. I'm another one of the co-chairs, but it was actually Tony who formed Somerset Bus Partnership some nearly 3.5 years ago. This is what we call one of our public meetings when we report back to people in Somerset what's happening on buses, what we've been doing. And this meeting is also going to be talking about some of the challenges facing us. Let's start by saying, what is Somerset Bus Partnership? Well, Somerset Live summed it up by saying the Somerset Bus Partnership is officially recognised by Somerset Council and the bus operators, particularly Buses of Somerset and First West of England, as representing bus users throughout Somerset. Somerset Bus Partnership has 12 bus user groups, over 150 local bus champions, some of whom will be with us this evening. And we run something like this year.
It was a man who knew how heavy the England shirt can feel to those who are lucky enough.
Watching the football.
He missed one of the penalties in one of English football's defining disappointments in Euro 96.
Could you possibly mute everyone, Tony?
I've muted the one who was talking. Just be with you in a moment.
Okay. So we've got 12 bus user groups, 150 local bus champions, some of whom may be with us this evening. And so far we've run, I think, 47 events, and we expect to do some 80 events through the year, which is a huge logistical and operational challenge for our organisation across the entirety of Somerset. We stretch from up here where I am, just north of Frome, down to the Yeovil area, across to Taunton and Wiveliscombe, and up to Bridgewater. So we and to Wells and Cheddar. So we hold events all over the Somerset Council area. And the partnership advocates for and disseminates information on local bus services. That's what Somerset Live says about us. It's a pretty good summary. One notable initiative that we've literally just launched is that we think it's about time we did a really major survey of what bus users think. There have been surveys before of bus users carried out by Somerset Council, but frankly, they've only managed to glean about 1,000 respondents. We're hoping to do much better than that. We've literally just launched it this week. If you'd like to be sent the questionnaire, please put your email address on the chat, and you'll probably get sent copies. You'll see it online. We're mailing it to our database, and it's going on Facebook pages, and it will be going to parish clerks round the county as well. But it's a really important vehicle for getting feedback from you, the bus users, about your level of satisfaction with the bus services and your thoughts on the bus services. It's a really important thing for a bus group like ours to be doing. So today's agenda, I talked about the challenges. We're going to be talking about those challenges. We're going to be talking about updates on the bus operators and the timetable change, which kicks in on September the 1st. There are only 2 timetable changes approved time slots by Somerset Council. One is in April or the end of March next year, and the other one is the beginning of September. So be a lot of change at that time across the area as a whole. September isn't just important for September's change date, it's also Catch the Bus month, when the whole country comes together to promote bus groups across the country. And we're told that we hold more events for September Catch the Bus month than anywhere else in the country. We get right behind this exercise. And then one of our leading members, Rosa Kell, is going to talk about the role of a bus champion as well. So the challenges we're facing. Somerset Alive says that Somerset bus services face a critical crossroads and fight to survive. Bus service has gone through a really challenging time. COVID was truly devastating for bus services, as it was for rail services, as it was for many other aspects of the economy. But it was only nearly every night that we had our Prime Minister on television telling us not to go on buses, not to go on trains, because they weren't safe. And we saw bus usage drop to 20% of what it used to be before. It's now almost recovered, but one of the other consequences of COVID is working from home, and that's impacted on bus usage as well. So the recovery isn't quite there, but we have seen a remarkable recovery. So we're meeting that challenge, but the more worrying challenge now is what happened last December when Somerset Council declared a financial emergency. Now, why is that important? It's because Somerset Council funds something like 2/3 of all bus services in the Somerset Council area. And should, as is currently predicted, Somerset Council bust, except they will call it applying for a Section 114, but in effect they will go bust, they will hand over the control. And where that's happened in other local transport authorities, we've seen pretty major, for those people affected, catastrophic bus cuts. Well, unless something is done to change the financial setup in Somerset that allows them to generate more income or is given more income by the government, we will be next year having to submit a Section 114, and bus operations are going to come under major cutbacks, we fear. And it's not just that when we talk about the challenges facing us. The bus service improvement plan, which was developed nearly 3 years ago, which succeeded in getting some nearly £12 million of government funding for buses, some of which are funding some of our most important bus services, as well as the £1 fare in Taunton, the Slinky trial in Somerton, and many other initiatives, including the priority bus lanes going in Taunton. That funding comes to an end in March 25, and there's no indication of any future funding. And as I mentioned, some of the major bus routes in Somerset are funded with the help of that BSIP funding. And it's not just that. The £2 fare is set to end in December. Now, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems committed to extend that, in the case of the Conservatives, throughout the whole life of this current government. Labour is yet to say what they're going to do about the £2 fare. It's hard to imagine that it won't be extended, but at the moment we haven't had any confirmation. So there are a lot of threats, a lot of challenges facing us going forward. But on the other hand, we have a new government, and it's a government which has already appointed its Department for Transport ministerial team. We have Louise Haigh, who is the Minister of State for Transport, and Simon Lightwood, who is going to be, in effect, the buses minister, local transport minister. Simon Lightwood lives in Wakefield, and Louise Haigh lives and represents a Sheffield constituency. The concern has to be that the orientation of that transport team is going to be very northern. But the good news is that it is a very bus-oriented transport team. Lord Peter Hendy, who's going to be in charge of rail, actually has 2 vintage buses himself. So there is a lot of interest in buses. And one of the first statements that Louise Haigh made is local bus services have been neglected for far too long. And nowhere is that more relevant than in the case of Somerset. Because 3 years ago, when we submitted, or Somerset Council submitted its bus service improvement plan, they acknowledged in that plan that Somerset had the worst rated bus services of any local authority in the country. And despite the best efforts of the newly elected councillors, we haven't seen much improvement over that period. So we are in Somerset suffering some of the worst bus services in the country. And it's going to be down to our MPs to make that case to the likes of Louise Haigh and to Simon Lightwood. And what has happened in Somerset is that there's been a transformation from an entirely blue county to a nearly all yellow, or is it orange? I'm not quite sure what colour the Lib Dems choose to call themselves. But with the exception of Bridgewater, the rest of Somerset has gone Lib Dem in a most remarkable shift. What it does mean is that we've got almost entirely new MPs. Yes, Tessa Munt has been an MP before, and Sarah Dyke has been, albeit an incredibly active MP, because she was my MP, so I watched what she was doing very carefully over the past year. But she's only been an MP for a year. But Anna Sabine, Gideon Amos, Adam Dance, Rachel Gilmore are all brand new MPs, and they're all taking up the reins of their constituencies. And even the one remaining Conservative, Ashley Fox, who's a very experienced politician, having led the Conservative group on the European Parliament for some 5 years. He is new to the House of Commons. But what we will need to do is ensure that these MPs work together as a team to make the case for Somerset. Now, we've talked to, you see little green buses, we've talked to all of those MPs. Sarah Dyke probably most often about buses. She's become a real bus campaigner, coming to many of our meetings. Adam Dance very much involved in trying to protect the situation in Yeovil. And I know that Anna Sabine and Gideon Amos and Tessa Munt are all very, very aware of buses. And Rachel Gilmore, we've yet to engage with Rachel, but I know she was engaged very much with trying to save the 25 bus service. And Ashley Fox, who works very closely with Diogo Rodriguez in Bridgewater, who is the Conservative transport lead on Somerset Council. I'm sure we'll get briefed very extensively by Diogo on the challenges facing Somerset. But we need you to engage with your MPs, engage and emphasise that Somerset, and this is why we need the MPs to work together as a group, needs to make it very clear to the Labour government with a huge majority that Somerset's funding situation has to be addressed, because if it isn't addressed, the consequences for Somerset are going to be really quite extreme. Also, we need them to be making the case to Louise Haigh about the importance of coming down to Somerset and seeing what the opportunities are for buses, and particularly coming down. She needs to come down to Bridgewater with a new giga plant going into Bridgewater. There are all sorts of transport issues with rail, but also with buses and motorways. She really does need to be persuaded to come down, and we should seize the opportunity when she does come down to just stress the issues concerning our Somerset's buses. But one of the really big things that we're seeing in terms of change is that franchising, bus franchising, which we've seen for many years in London, has just been introduced into Manchester and is being introduced into one or two of the mayoral combined authorities, like West Midlands, hasn't yet been put forward for WECA, West of England Combined Authority, just over the border to the north of us. But bus franchising is very much at the centre of Labour's policy on buses. Also is a key component of the Lib Dem policy on buses. Big challenge is going to be introducing bus franchising into rural areas, and Somerset would be an excellent test bed for doing precisely that. We've done people in Somerset Bus Partnership and associated with Somerset Bus Partnership have done a lot of work on bus franchising. We're ready to start to talk both to Somerset Council and to the government and to our MPs about the possibilities of bus franchising in Somerset. It should be on the agenda of our new MPs because it could herald a much brighter future for Somerset's buses, and we deserve a much brighter future. But we've got other good news because we're getting some electric buses at long last. They're going to be based down in Taunton, which has been the focus of much of the government money which came into Somerset. 25 electric buses. And what's really important, it's a £14.7 million investment. Just over £2 million came from the government, but the best part of £12.5 million came from First Group. And many of us were getting quite concerned about First Group's attitude towards Somerset. Were they really committed to the county? Well, I think they've shown that they are committed. They're investing £12 million in buses, which will be introduced in 2025 into Somerset, which will be a really significant upgrade of our fleet, as well as being environmentally far superior. So that's very good news. The other initiative has been the Slinky service, which has been introduced, and I'll hand over to Tony Rees to talk about this because Tony has been very actively promoting this with colleagues from Somerset Council. Tony.
Thank you, Peter. Well, What you can see there is a Slinky bus we borrowed for one of our weekend events. I could also show you, I think you may have seen this one on Facebook. That one. And that's a Slinky bus going to Lighters Carey, which is a National Trust location. National Trust don't usually have connections with the bus services and with public transport. And I'm not going to try and show any more pictures. I'll just talk for a minute or two. The Somerton Slinky bus, if any of you know anything about Slinky services in the rest of Somerset, I'd ask you to forget everything you knew. It's slightly unfortunate they used the same name because the Somerton Slinky is something quite different. It is paid for by Somerset Bus Improvement Plan money, so it is guaranteed money for 2 years. It's a service available to anyone. You don't have to say, I haven't got access to a car or I'm disabled or anything else. The buses do have a wheelchair space, but they're also available to absolutely anybody. It's a demand responsive service. You ring up or use the app and say, I want to go from here to here at such and such a time, and the system will find out if there's a bus available, and if not, will quote the nearest possible time it can to match what you want. But the important things about it to notice are it's a trial. It's new, the software's new, there are things that will go wrong, but it's a trial for 2 years. It's paid for until the end of May 2025. We need to start looking, Somerset need to start looking really in about a year's time as to who will fund it thereafter. So when you're talking to your MPs or looking at funding for Somerset buses, remember we need to find somebody to support it beyond the end of after May 2025. To be successful, we're going to have to show how successful it is. And if we're going to look for money in a year's time, the time to start using it and making it show that it's successful is about now. So I'm asking everybody who lives near Somerton or Langport to really use it, talk about it with other people, talk about it with friends, give them some leaflets, be aware of what it does and what it doesn't do. I'm not going to go through details now, but you can talk to me afterwards. I can give you much more detail. If you live outside that area, well, think of coming to somewhere within that area. It's a small area. As a trial, it needs to be small. I've looked at lots of demand responsive services. They can be quite exciting. A lot of them fail because they're just not known about and they don't have the software to support them and they don't work well. This one looks as though it's been well sourced. But we need a lot of publicity, as we do with all our services. So we have the same problem across all the other routes. But Somerton Slinky particularly needs a lot of effort, preferably from everyone here. Get yourself some leaflets, talk to somebody, use it. I shall be out and about on it again tomorrow, just to see where it goes, how it works. There's an app which is useful for some of our younger people who really don't like talking to people on the phone and don't like phone systems. But there's also a phone number at the moment with dedicated staff who have been well trained. They share the office with the fellow who's responsible for it. So if they don't know the answer to a question, there's usually somebody near them who does. It looks as though it could be successful. It will be if we all support it. And that's really the message for the rest of the evening as well about everything else we want to talk about. But it's particularly true of the Somerton Slinky.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you very much. So one of the important things we've now established is that we have regular meetings with the two biggest bus operators within the Somerset Council area. The first one is First South, who run buses of Somerset, and the other one is First West of England, who operates principally in the Mendip area, but also runs some bus services as far as Yeovil. We discussed changes because, in fact, in the absence of Somerset Council, because of financial problems, not being in a position to offer any extra subsidies for a service which is struggling financially, it does put the bus operators very much in the driving seat. And so it's become absolutely essential that we develop a good, working, constructive relationship with the bus operators, trying to find ways of making sure that the bus services remain viable in all the different parts of the Somerset area. Yes, sometimes we have to contend with cuts. What we try and do is minimize those cuts, but if First Bus can't make money out of a route, they have to take action. They can't run buses at a loss for any period of time. And so we try and work with them to propose cuts which are less painful and which can set a platform for recovery. And yes, the bus operators also want to improve their services, and they will come to us and suggest improvements, sometimes prompted by things we might have said previously. So it's a difficult relationship because at the end of the day, it is their decision whether they want to continue running bus services and to improve their bus services. But they have a business to run. They need to make money, but they also need, particularly with this Labour government talking about growth, to be focused on growing their bus network. And that's what we will be encouraging them to think about. So I'm now going to hand over to Emery to talk about some of the bus changes that First West of England are going to introduce at the September bus change. Emery.
Thank you, Peter. So this is a list of issues that we've raised with First West of England, particularly. There's also many other issues we've raised with First South and Somerset Council at the Bus Advisory Board. So some of them include the overcrowding on the 126, the 375 skipping Catcop, the 374 and the 375 showing intermediate destinations on their routes, not the final destination, because of them having split registrations, which can be a bit confusing for passengers when they don't know where the bus is actually going to. Lack of paper timetables at bus stops. That's a big issue across the county. Lack of cancellation information posted online. A lot of people don't use X or Twitter, which is where many cancellations are reported, and Windmill Hill in Glastonbury being skipped. So these are the September service changes for First West of England in the Somerset area. The 77 and 77A are going to be withdrawn and replaced with an extended 376 to Yeovil. The last service to and from Yeovil will be curtailed in Somerton, where there will be connections with the 54. It's not ideal, but we did persuade them to move that so that those connections with the 54 would work. 6 fewer calls at road per day on the D2. Timetable changes on all routes to improve punctuality. Services 374 and 375 won't serve Windmill Hill in Glastonbury anymore, and a new service 373 will be running between Street and Wells via Windmill Hill every 100 minutes, also serving Green Lane Avenue and Street, which will no longer have direct buses to Bristol in the daytime, and some late evening 173 services will run as 171.
Thanks, Emery. We were also meeting at director level with First South. It was a series of meetings that was very much done at their instigation after been a lot of issues with buses of Somerset, and we're meeting with them next on July the 17th in 2 days' time. And we'll be talking a range of issues with them. But one of the issues that we did raise with them some time back was, could you run the 54 via Yeovilton? And as anyone in that part of the world will know, the 54 is now running through Yeovilton. So the bus companies will listen to constructive suggestions, and that's the environment in which bus campaigners have to work, because we no longer can turn to the council for financial support for problem routes. We have to find a solution working with the bus operators. And some operational updates, which we've literally had today. The possibility of industrial action by the RMT. Nobody wants this action. I'm sure the RMT don't, and First South most definitely don't want this action, but it could affect, is likely at the moment to affect buses of Somerset services. Though every step I've been assured by buses of Somerset will be taken to minimise the impact. But July the 23rd and the 24th are the dates for this industrial action. There are continuing negotiations with the RMT. We can only hope that a resolution will be found, but if not, there will be a series of impacts on bus services. We will try and notify people as much as we can as to what those impacts are. As many of you will know, we have Facebook pages located in the various bus user groups across the county, and we post on those Facebook pages information on bus changes, bus cancellations, bus problems that arise, because as Emery says, we often see those coming up on Twitter, but most bus users are not on Twitter, whereas a lot of bus users are on Facebook. So we use that as being a key communication platform. So if that strike goes ahead, then check your local bus user group Facebook page, and we'll try and keep you informed as much as we can. The other one affects my part of the county. It's the closure of one of the major artery roads in Somerset, the road that links Frome and through to Bath, really important commuter route. And it's not just being closed for a few days, it is literally being closed for at least 6 months, possibly longer. This is going to have a major impact on this part of Somerset. It's going to cause huge disruption, not only to the A36, but the traffic will have to go elsewhere. And so all the alternative routes are going to get horribly jammed. The X34, which is one of the first West of England services between Frome and Bath, will have to go via Radstock. The details are yet to be finalised. The D2, which goes down country lanes or country roads into Bath, those roads are going to be horribly congested, and so that bus service is going to be held up and no doubt delayed many times. And this isn't just a few days, this is going to go on for at least 6 months. It's going to be a major problem. So Emery touched on the fact that information wasn't got out for the April timetable change. One of the problems in Somerset compared with most of our neighbouring authorities, if you go over the border into Bath, you see something called RTI, real-time information. That's a real-time information display. It's the best advertisement for persuading people to use buses that there is, because it tells you what the bus number is, where it's going to, and how many minutes away it is. it would be wonderful to have that in Somerset, but Somerset can't afford to do it. And so we don't have it here. What we have is a budget variant whereby we have QR codes at bus stops. And if you've got a smartphone and you know how to operate a QR code, a couple of big provisos, and you've got, of course, a strong enough mobile signal, you'll be able to check where your bus is. Well, you will if the QR code is actually at that bus stop, but the rollout has been slowed and almost halted because of bus cuts and budget cuts in Somerset. So we have the situation in April that most bus stops had incorrect information, excuse me, at the time of the April bus timetable change. Most bus stops were showing out of date, misleading information. And nobody had told them that the bus times were changing on the beginning of April. So the outcome with that was many regular bus passengers were unaware that bus timetables had changed. So we're standing at bus stops waiting for buses, which might have gone 10 minutes before, or with a bit of luck, might be coming in 5 or 10 minutes or an hour's time later. It is an unacceptable way of treating loyal customers. No other industry, no other business would treat its loyal customers in that way, not telling them how bus times were going to change, their services were being changed. So we have to do something about that. We know that the bus times are going to change on September the 1st. We know all about that. So what we're saying is that we need to make this event a major event so that those people who can access information online know to look online to see what the revised bus times are. Because last April, there was barely any mention of the fact on the local television, on the local radio, in the local press, that this was a significant event for a lot of people who travel by bus. All their bus times are likely to have changed at the beginning of April. Well, they're likely to change again at the beginning of September. So we've said to the bus operators, all of whom have very good PR departments, very professionally run PR departments, that they need to, Somerset Council needs to, town and parish councils through their websites and Facebook pages need to, Somerset Bus Partnership need to send out information to the local media, to the local TV, to the local radio, to the local press, put it on social media. Let us make it a real event. Our bus times only change twice a year. They're going to change at the beginning of September. If you're traveling by bus, see if you can check online and see what your bus times will be as from the 1st of September. If you can't check online, then see if you can come and find one of our bus stalls and get a printed bus timetable. Because we run bus stalls across the county to do precisely that. Generally in the centres of the towns, you can see one here in Wells, in Yeovil and in Frome, and there'll be similar stalls in all the major towns run by our bus user groups. We print the bus timetable in many cases. First South do produce a Buses of Somerset timetable booklet, an excellent booklet, but for many of the operators, we have to create, produce and print the bus timetables. Most of our money goes on printing those bus timetables, and we give 40,000 copies away. And we hold bus stalls everywhere. These are the stalls for that particular weekend period. And as you can see, we're right across the county trying to be able to inform particularly those people, maybe they're a bit older, maybe they're not be able to afford a smartphone, can't access the internet because they don't have the skill sets, they don't have the ability. So we were there at these bus stalls across the county, particularly over that weekend of the 31st of August, the 1st of September, giving away thousands, tens of thousands of bus timetables. But we do more than that. But that's a very important part of our function, is giving away bus timetable information, printed bus timetable information, because sadly it's not there at bus stops often, though we are pressurizing the bus companies to make sure they do update it at bus stops as much as they can. Somerset Council don't really do that on the routes that they are responsible for. But what else do we do? We've had a very busy year this year campaigning, and we don't like demonstrating out on the streets, but when we do it, we do it quite well. This was down in Wiveliscombe. We took the campaign to various parts of Somerset to save the 25, the 28, the 54, and the 58. We were in Yeovil with a large group of people. We were in Taunton, we were in Wiveliscombe, and we followed Somerset Council to their council meeting in Bridgewater. And we did save the 25, the 28, the 54, and the 58, because at that time there was still some government funding money which hadn't been allocated. And so Somerset Council sat down with First South and they sorted a deal. It wasn't a perfect deal. We've seen cuts to many of those services, most especially to the 25, but we did keep those bus services running because of the protests that we kicked up, and because both parties wanted to find a way through, and a way through was found. We've also campaigned about Yeovil bus station. Yes, the bus station's going to stay there, but the waiting room was going to close and the toilets were going to close. Now, when you get off the 54 bus, having come all the way from Taunton, or you get off the Bridport 6 service getting into Taunton, after 45, 50 minutes journey, and many bus users are getting on in years, one of the first things you look for is a toilet. Well, there isn't a toilet anywhere that near Yeovil station because really sadly, the toilets have been closed. Our bus campaigner, who's there on the right, Linda Snelling, one of the most active bus campaigners in Somerset. Many of you will have seen her handiwork on bus user Facebook pages across much of the south of Somerset. She's responsible for posting news about bus changes, bus cuts, bus problems. She's the person who does it. She's also the leading campaigner in Yeovil. And you can see her here with Adam Dance, who is now the MP for Yeovil. We welcome Adam as the MP. He was very much involved trying to work with Linda, who was working to try and see if we could get some temporary toilets brought in, some porta cabins. In the end, that didn't work, or it hasn't as yet. But Linda did, working with First South, manage to keep the waiting room open. It's not the perfect solution, but it's a partial solution. And it's a result of an awful lot of work and a very major protest, including a lot of people from Dorset, because the bus station in Yeovil is a very important bus station for people in Dorset as well as in Somerset. So now to the other element of our operations, which is promoting the use of buses, trying to persuade people, for whatever reason, environmental, economic, social reasons, to choose to go by their local bus. And we have 12 bus groups across the county, and they will all be out there in September promoting Catch the Bus Month with these very loud and very visible hands. We've got here, we've got Tony Rees and Linda Snelling in Yeovil. We've got the former mayor of Bridgewater. We've got the former mayor of Highbridge and Burnham. When they were mayors, they were there. We're out there talking to people about their bus services, trying to encourage people to use their buses, because if we don't use buses more, those bus services are likely to decline. So we need to get more and more people to use buses, and there are so many reasons to do it. And we'll be out there with our bus stalls. I'm now going to hand over to Rosa Kell. Rosa is one of our most active and social bus campaigners. She's based in Wales, but she goes all over the county on many bus stalls. Many of you will know Rosa. Rosa, over to you to talk about the bus champions.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Apologies if I haven't got round to you. Believe me, I will. It's a large county to travel round. I not only look after the bus champions, I look after some of the administration and some of the database. But today I'm going to talk about volunteering bus champions. They can be members of the public, bus users, bus enthusiasts, old, young, whatever. They can be councillors. We have on most of 125 odd parishes a named bus champion on their councils, but we don't always see them. And of course, when the time comes, like this September will be, where we have a very large number of stalls going on, we need a large number of volunteers. It doesn't require very much time. It can be as little as 2 hours. It can be a whole morning or a whole afternoon. But we'd like to get as many of you and your friends involved on those 2 weekends, because not only do we have, of course, the September Catch the Bus month, but we have the autumn timetable changes. So we're looking for volunteers as well. What can I say? You will be given information. You will be given help. You'll be provided with equipment, tables, chairs, timetables, all the accoutrement that you need for physically helping at a bus stall. If you are competent, that you've done it before for us, and you want to have a whole stall to yourself, and you don't need us, that's wonderful. That's great. But we're also looking for volunteers who can help us in the background, update the social media, maybe update a database where we need current contact details, email addresses, phone numbers, things like that. So if you'd like to volunteer in an admin capacity, please get in touch as well. There's very little really I can say, other than, like all event organizers, there is a shortage of volunteers. We need more volunteers, and the work is important because, as all my colleagues have said, there are so many people who are desperate for the handwritten paper information. Bus companies keep promising us that October is going to be different. we're going to have that information at bus stops. Personally, I have lots of doubt because they've let us down before. As I said, lead here, the Wells bus group, we've been let down. We've been promised instant, updated information, real time for April. It hasn't arrived. We were promised it for September last year. It hasn't arrived. So the fact that they tell us that they're going to have current bus timetable at all the bus stops in October, there is doubt. So we are preparing, because it's such a major change, to get as many of you involved as possible. So get in touch. I promise you, it will be so enjoyable talking to the various people, making a note of their complaints, because some of them obviously have complaints. They have physical difficulties. They can't read the online information because of various eyesight problem. As we get older, we all have these problems, you know. Many of you in this group I see are younger. Well done, you. When you get to our age, you'll appreciate the work that we are putting in now for your old age, as other older bus users get use of. But of course, Bus Catch Month in September is not only about existing bus passengers, it's encourage new passengers. And it's very important that we encourage by holding a coffee morning, by just holding a stall, the non-bus users to try the buses at least a couple of times a month. And September is an ideal time to do it.
Thanks, Rose.
Weekend trips and things. Sorry, yes, I'm waffling on a bit.
Oh,
It's been a tiring day. But folks, get in touch and come and join us.
yeah. And that's the key message. Come and join us, because you'll be very welcome, and you'll meet some interesting people. Incidentally, Rosa, along with one or two of our other members, has most deservedly, been given a Civic and Community Award. She does put in the most enormous amount of time. We don't expect our bus champions to do anything like the anything like quite the commitment of Rosa, but she sets us all and everybody within Somerset Bus Partnership an amazing example. So moving on to one of our bus champions who does more than we'd expect most bus champions to do, which is Philip Campagna. Actually, I think Philip's on the call. Philip, would you like to just say something about what you're doing in Frome and why you took it on, and why even when you were mayor, you were still able to be our bus champion in Frome?
Hi, Peter. Good evening, everyone. I think, well, the reason I first became involved was that I saw a call out on our councillors group that Peter Travis was coming to the town hall, and would a councillor be available to meet with him? Initially, one councillor said yes, they probably had the time, but then couldn't make it. And I thought, well, I'd met this chap before, I know Peter. So I said, okay, I'd go along. Little did I know what it would involve. But it's been great. It's now just been over a year, about 18 months that I've worked with Peter, and I am the named bus champion at Frome Town Council. I became mayor in May last year, May the 15th last year, and I very quickly realized that being mayor is that you don't have any power or any money, but what you do have is some influence. And so I used that to the advantage of buses in Frome by working very closely with Peter and Tracy Favbug to promote buses as much as I possibly could. One of the things that I very quickly realized was the state of bus shelters in Frome. They needed some maintenance in terms of cleaning off old posters, old timetables, weeding, generally just keeping them tidy. And my view was that, well, if we make these a tidy, clean environment, then we encourage people to use them more, and therefore they will use buses a lot more, and also make them a place where people think, you know, it is a more pleasant experience. One bus shelter that I had to clean out, which actually I'll come on to in a moment. It was a Somerset bus stop, not a Frome Town Council bus stop. Probably hadn't been cleaned for a number of years, with broken bottles, an old trainer, and lots of weeds and so on. So that was part of my aim, was to promote bus services with the help of Peter and Tracy within Frome, to use the chain, as it were, to ride buses. And Peter and I did that on a couple of occasions on the D2 into Road and into Bath, and also to act as the link between Somerset Bus Partnership and Frome Town Council, which has proved to be essential in order to getting things like bus timetables printed and promoting buses and so on, and getting them into the local press. So I'm still carrying on. I'll still do that as time allows. But just two things to mention. One is that, having spoken to our environment manager, we now have an agreement with our town rangers, as we call them. We have a recently newly appointed town centre ranger, and Peter and I met with him, Mike. He's been very active in the town, in keeping the town clean and tidy, and also acts as a link between us and town businesses, that we can use Mike and some of his services to keep the town centre bus shelters clean and tidy and free of graffiti and weeds and so on. And from that, what we're now working on is a town-wide programme of maintaining and cleaning bus shelters throughout the year. So that's the first point. So we have that as agreement with Frome Town Council. The second point is that at a very early meeting with Somerset Council about devolution, buses and obviously transport came up, and we discussed, and I won't go into that, but we discussed, the subsidies and so on for bus routes, which Peter's covered. But one of the things that Somerset said to us was that they were happy for us to have the bus shelters. Now, that I'm sure will happen right across Somerset, where councils may well, as we were told, may well be told, yes, you can have the bus shelters. But it obviously raises a number of issues. Is the ownership to be passed over? And if so, how? Who is responsible for the maintenance of those bus shelters? Particularly in Frome, Somerset were very bad at replacing damaged bus shelters or maintaining them. So we need to know, as a town council, what we'd be taking on, and whether or not the liability rests with us if the ownership still remains with Somerset in terms of damage and so on. So that's a discussion to be had, and that's something maybe Peter and I have discussed this, and that's something maybe that may be addressed county-wide, rather than each individual council having that discussion with Somerset, is if they're wanting to offload those bus shelters and maintenance of bus shelters and bus stops, how is that going to work for us as local communities and town and parish councils? So yeah, I'm enjoying very much cleaning bus shelters, enjoying very much trying to persuade people to help me, and I think we've been pretty successful in Frome, and hope to continue that route as long as possible.
Thanks, Philip. I mean, it was interesting. Last year we had the Mayor of Frome in Philip, we had Mick Leary, the Mayor of Bridgewater, and Leslie Millard, the Mayor of Highbridge and Bridgewater, and Highbridge and Burnham, all promoting buses. They're no longer the mayors, but they're still all promoting buses. But it does show the role that a council chair or a mayor can play in leading the battle on buses. So if any of you are involved in councils, your position in the community is one that can set an example by travelling by bus, by doing things to help and encourage buses, which is very important. Another thing, because in my village, I live in a village just to the north of Frome. I'm the bus champion there. And we'd really struggled with buses. We'd lost most of our buses. And our parish council said, we really do need to do something about keeping our buses. And so what we introduced, and it's something particularly parishes, villages can look at, but also towns, we produce our own printed timetable. We've talked a lot about printed timetables, but we know that there are a lot of regular bus users who really find a printed timetable a great way of planning their journeys. And so in the village of Rode, we produce this. We print something like 800 copies. It costs us only £150. It's a 4-page A5 folded A4, 4-page A5 bus timetable, and it's large enough type that anybody can read it. It's not pretty, but it's easily accessed, and it's really had a big impact. Our councillors door drop it to every house. In a village, you can do this sort of thing, door drop it to every house in the village. And they say they get more compliments from doing that than anything else they do as parish councillors. So it has its rewards. And it's just interesting the angle we take. Yes, we know there's an economy angle. £2 to get from our village to Bath is an absolute bargain. It's less than it costs to park the car in Bath. Yes, there's the environmental argument. But in a village where you're aware of your fellow citizens, or even in a town where you're conscious of your fellow citizens, to be aware of the many residents, particularly the young, because they're too young to drive, but they're young enough to explore and get out a bit, or the old who may have decided that they don't want to drive anymore, or those who don't actually have enough cash to be able to afford to run a car. Those people rely entirely, they are totally dependent on buses if they're not going to be isolated for getting to jobs, to hospitals, just having an evening out. And that's why so many people in our village go out of their way, rather than going to Bath in the car, to go by bus because of the social consequences for the community. So it's another reason to bus it.
Peter,
Yes.
Alan Peters has his hand up.
Alan. Hello, Alan. Alan is a bus operator.
Yeah, hi, Peter. A couple of things that you've gone through already that I wanted to enhance, for want of a better word. You say about real-time information, but anybody with a mobile phone of any decent calibre has got real-time information using bustimes.org or the First app. I've just actually checked, and I can tell you the 21 from North Pellerton is due in 34 minutes. Yeah. Second point, bus shelters in Weka, well, in Bristol, where I am, as you know, all our bus shelters are advert shelters by Clear Channel, and I've never understood why Somerset haven't got advert shelters. You know, all right, some country locations, they wouldn't be worthwhile for the advertising agency, but any shopping street or any main road, they'd welcome the opportunity to put an advert shelter up, I would have thought. And you know, a Clear Channel in Bristol clean them every 2 or 3 days, I believe. I'm forever coming across them parked at the bus stop, you know, where we want to stop because they're actually washing down the shelter. And the third thing, if I may, the new service from Wells to Windmill Hill every 100 minutes. Seriously, 1 hour and 40 minutes? Can't it be 2 hours so you can remember what time past the hour every bus is going to be? Instead of having to make a major calculation from 8 o'clock in the morning to find out what time the bus nearest 3 o'clock is going to be.
Yep.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, firstly, I totally agree about bus times. If you have a good phone, a modern phone, and you have good mobile reception, then bustimes.org, which has got real-time information, is a fantastic service. Unfortunately, a lot of bus users don't have either that type of phone, or where they live in rural Somerset, that type of mobile reception. But if
can I just say as well, Peter, the first app I used as well, just to check that the first app worked on on buses in Somerset, because I didn't know if it did, to be perfectly honest, and it appears to. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So if you've got an up-to-date phone, then yes. If you've got mobile reception, use the bustimes.org. It's a great service, and it's one I certainly use myself. Bus advertising, as somebody who's spent his career in advertising, I think it's a huge missed opportunity in the towns of Frome and Taunton and Wells and Yeovil. Well, Yeovil does have bus advertising, but it doesn't seem to be able to make the bus stops that much better. But it is a missed opportunity. The trouble is, you need people to set it up, and with all the cost limitations in Somerset, they haven't allocated the resource to set it up. But as you say, elsewhere in the country, including in Wecker, it's a very viable business model. If there was more resource, we could perhaps get it to be done. It's something which ought to be on a local politician's agenda, is to explore it. And clock face timetables, if only. I mean, it does have implications where buses have to go onto other routes, but yes, it is so much better if the bus is going to be every hour at 20 past the hour, rather than you're having to look all the time as to what it is. Bus operators are finding it hard to deliver those sorts of bus timetables. Anyway, finally from me, and then I will come on to questions. If any of you feel so enthused after all of this that you feel you could help Somerset Bus Partnership, we could do with more people. You can contact us at somersetbuspartnership@gmail.com. Whatever the skill sets you might have, it might be in clerical work, it might be in marketing, it might be in social media, it might be in copywriting, it might be in organizing bus stalls and events. Anybody who'd like to get involved, would really like to see you. So get in touch with us, somersetbuspartnership@gmail.com. So I've talked for far too much. My apologies for that. But it was an update meeting and there was a lot of ground to cover. I see that Susan has got her hand up. Come to you, Susan, first, and then to David Redwell.
Thank you. You were talking about closing the closure of the Yeovil toilets. What do the bus drivers do?
Exactly. What do they do? There is a toilet, because I discovered this when in Yeovil, about 250 yards away, which the public can use. I think that, I'm not absolutely certain, but I think there may be a toilet for the bus driver, but that's not a public toilet. It's just a one for the staff.
All right, right. I just wondered if they were in the same situation, that was all. And also, I'm thinking at the moment, I'm working on something to go in the monthly church magazine. And I was only thinking about, when you were saying about trying to get new users from September onwards, I'm just trying to trigger people's ideas about what to do with children and grandchildren over the holidays.
Yeah.
And just, ideas that maybe once they've had a trip on a bus, what they can do at the other end. And so maybe that's something we can work on as well.
Yes.
That's a really good point, because if you've got grandchildren, you're quite probably traveling free yourself, and it's a cheap day out. And also, I'd really like to say what a good idea it is to think of parish magazines. Parish magazines do have a very significant and loyal readership. It is very local, so you can be very specific about your bus services within your village. In the past, we've sent out copy to the parish magazines ourselves, but it would be much better if it was locally created. So bus champions, if you're on this call, or even if you don't see yourself as a bus champion, it would be great to put an article in for the parish magazine. Most editors of parish magazines are desperate for copy. So you write something for the August issue, which copy dates are coming up, I should think, this week.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Get it in there. Yeah, Wednesday. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
It'd be a great thing to do.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. David Redgewell.
Peter, I hope people can hear me. I'm on a bus actually on supposed to pass one of the
loud and clear, David.
Sorry?
You're loud and clear.
Can people hear me all right?
Yep.
So the point I wanted to make is tomorrow's King's speech will include a new structure for the buses and the trains and devolution. And I think people need to look at that very carefully, and the rules you've been working under with BSIP and with the Shire counties, whether that's Somerset, Gloucester, Wiltshire, Devon and Cornwall or Dorset, will change. I think you might see more regional intervention and more money targeted at the regions to work through buses. And of course, Somerset's a bit unique. In the north, where Rosa does most of her campaigning, of course, we're talking about North Somerset and Baines, and of course your own area, Peter, Wecker. And of course, the Somerset parliamentary constituencies have no jurisdiction with the old county council area. So I think there'll be much more of a look at regions and how the money's spent. And I think that's going to be interesting. And franchising, well, the point was made by Dan Norris to me before the weekend for Transformer Buses collapsed. He said, well, what colours will we be painting Somerset's buses? Would they have Westlink on the side, or would they have Somerset bus? Because Wells Depot would be served by both. So it'd be an interesting debate there. So I wanted just to raise that. On the issue of the toilets, I've had an email from Adam Dance, and he tells me they're in quite detailed negotiations, and there should be some portable toilets coming to Yeovil bus station, which I think is good news, bearing in mind that the government is again funding the project at Yeovil through Department for Local Government, just like Taunton, which is Department for Transport. So I think the government will expect pasture facilities to be raised at Yeovil whilst they regenerate the place. And I think there'll be more intervention by ministers if they don't. So I think things will move towards some portable loos at Yeovil. The only other thing I wanted to raise, obviously, some of us are meeting Hannah Young tomorrow and the North Somerset bus team to talk about the cross-border issues and issues about the 126, which will be very helpful and very useful. And also, of course, there's electric buses coming to Weston for delivering, as well as in their press release. And I believe First is now employing via Wecker somebody to do the bus stop maintenance. But Doug Claringbold did a deal, and I understand paper timetables are going to go up across 376, 374, 375. 376 is going to be more viable in September because it's going to go through Yeovil, and that's going to be very helpful because it will receive money from the West of England Combined Authority to maintain it, and then it obviously run at Somerset proper. So I think providing the reliability and punctuality can be maintained. And I think a lot of that's to do with first making investment decisions in Yeovil with an extra depot there for services to go into and out of if there's problems, which I mean we need to keep pushing. And then the other point I wanted to make, really, I was very disappointing to see Scottish City Link Megabus withdraw the express services through the county between Barnstable and Southampton and Tiverton and into Taunton, Bridgewater, Weston, and up to Bristol and Cheltenham, and then on to the north. And that service has been around for a long time. And it was withdrawn there. Or Gateway did not actually jump up and down and say, yeah, another express service goes, because local buses are fine. But as David Nordy says, you need a coach service or a railway service to feed into to come out of the county or out of the southwest region. So those are the points I wanted to make, really. But we need to keep pushing on Taunton bus station and Yeovil bus station, because it is government money. And I think Louise Haigh is looking for more delivery on the ground. As she said, let's get on and fix it is the new motto at the department. And I'm not sure they'll wait around for councils that don't move in line with government money. So I think there will be emphasis on civil servants saying at regional level to get on and fix it and make sure that bus station gets reopened and temperatures are at Yeovil. If we don't get it, then I'd simply go to the minister, I would suggest. Stephen Lightfoot is the new Minister for Buses. So there's my points. Good meeting, thank you.
Thanks. Jose Alala.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Peter. Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm not a bus champion or anything like that. I'm just a general bus user. And there's 2 points I want to make. I've raised this up before on several occasions, but recently, and in fact, as recent as last week, so between the 8th and the 12th of July, there was no buses going through my village, Bishop Auckland. Bishop's Lydiard. I beg your pardon. And what it is, there was some cabling to be done in one of the roads. So where the bus would come down from Bishop's Lydiard station through the village, and now then it was going to go through the Taunton Road, which avoids all the villages and most of the housing. On the other side of the village, which is served by Hatch Green buses, which goes from Bishop's Lydiard, Cottbus and Luke, all the way to Taunton, they were also doing roadworks up there as well. So basically, the 23 bus route and the 28 bus route were not coming through the village at all. So we were all isolated in that respect, especially people with mobility issues, older people couldn't get anywhere, but bumped into people several times. On the Saturday, the 13th of July, where the works would have been done already, supposedly, we went to go to Taunton. Went to a non-bus stop, which is basically in an area, a road called Heatherbead. The bus didn't turn up. And on your bustimes.org app and the first bus app, it showed the bus coming along and then going past the village. Okay, so we had to miss that bus, walk all the way up to the railway station, which is for young and normal people is not difficult, but for us it's a good 20-minute walk. Yep. Knees, back, the whole thing, everything takes effect. So anyway, so we had to go all the way up there. When I spoke to the driver that came on the next bus, are you going through the village or are you going down Taunton Road? He said, well, down Taunton Road. I said, but the village is clear. The road is all clear. The work finished yesterday. And he said, we haven't been given clearance.
Yeah.
Right? So then I said, but the 28 bus that was going to Minehead in the opposite direction, that went through the village.
Yeah.
And well, he shouldn't have done because we haven't been given clearance. Right. So my point is, apart from being isolated and all that sort of thing, is you've had some good ideas there about the QR codes, which a lot of other people, again, as you said, because of the type of mobile phones they have, the Wi-Fi coverage that they have, they cannot access all those things or whatever. All those things are good. Timetables are excellent if the buses turn up.
Yeah.
If the buses don't turn up, there's no point having a timetable.
Tony,
Right.
do you want to comment on that?
I do want to comment on it. This is something that really makes me very angry indeed.
Sorry, Tony, can I just make- can I just make-
We need as. Can I
If I make
take-
my second point, then you can take over the conversation completely.
Okay.
Because my other second point, which is all to do with communication, right, is who do you trust and who do you not trust?
Yeah.
Because I've taken all these issues up with Mike Rigby, who's my parish, who was a councillor in my parish, and he was a Somerset transport leader.
He was.
Yeah, and then he said to me, "Oh, all that was after." I said, "No, it wasn't after you left the office. All this was done. I done surveys and monitored buses in September, August and September last year, when he was still there, and I took it up with him in several council meetings, right?
Oh.
So you've got things like that. Then you've got people like Peter Eustace. James Eustace. I beg your pardon. James Eustace, who's the commercial director for Buses of Somerset.
Yeah.
Right. So he said in February, he was saying about the risk of the 28 bus and the 25 bus and the 54 bus and whatever, because they're not being used. On the 9th of May, he says, and I'm quoting all this, I'm quoting him, okay? It was clear that we needed to add more journeys to the popular 28 X28 route. So if it was clear to them, why were they saying there was going to be there was enough buses?
Which is a very seasonal service, that particular route.
Well, but it's not, because like I said, when I did the survey and the thing during September, the whole month of September, which is after holidays, for Minehead or whatever, doing buses and other issues, I was under the impression, or I was told, that First Bus had said they needed 143 passengers per day. All my monitoring, all my statistics that I took at different times of day and whatever, and put them all together, my average per day was 280 people.
Yeah.
Right. And when I told them, Mark Rigby and First Bus and all those people, they said, "Oh no. I was there picking people off."
I know.
So who do you trust? Anyway, sorry, that was my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Tony, do you want to
on
come
that
back on that?
second point, I don't want to say much, but first came in as a out of the blue announcement that they couldn't afford to run these 4 buses. Somerset found some money. The 58, which was one of those 4 buses, nothing has changed. No money has changed hands, and yet it's still running. So as you say, who do you trust? Yeah. On roadworks, we really need to do something. We need somebody, preferably one of the bus champions, to actually really get to the bottom of this. Somerset Council keep telling us there are notifications of roadworks. They take buses into account, they announce them, but most people seem to see them the day they happen. Today, on the Bridport bus, which is my local bus, they closed a different section of the road. I emailed them last night. I got a response back this morning saying, "We will serve Crooken Station as normal." The first bus got there, had to turn around and go back a different way because he couldn't go any further. And for the rest of the day, no buses serve Crooken Station on either of the routes that comes through. So I've emailed him this evening and said, "I'm glad I didn't take your advice and wait for the bus because it didn't get there. What are you doing about it? How many times have you served Crooken Station today? And, how are we going to tell people?" But what is wrong is that nobody is doing the planning. It would be possible, if anybody had the time, to monitor the announcements that are made, check them when they come in, check back with whoever's agreed them that they have actually considered bus routes, and make sure that operators are aware of them. As you said, they don't know. quite often, as like this morning, it's the first bus through in the day, gets to the roadworks and says, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
He had to turn around. And as you say, at the other end, when they finished, nobody says, oh, they finished 2 days ago. Why aren't you going through the village?
Oh.
But I don't know. We get no response out of Somerset Council every time we raise it. We get no response from the operators. They seem to be just as unaware as we are. We need somebody to actually take this up as an idea and monitor all the announcements. They are all there, but I never get to find them in time. Preston Road in Yeovil, I think, shuts today. Yeah, and I don't think Linda's with us, but that will be an interesting one. I think there are 3 major routes that shut today, and some of them, as you say, for weeks, months at a time.
Yeah.
But nobody actually plans what to do with the buses.
But also they don't have to. They don't need to be major routes because the small villages are not in major routes.
Yes, and that too. But
Anyway,
if anybody has the time to monitor this and be really our spokesperson on roadworks, we'd really love some help. Otherwise, just keep monitoring them yourself and making sure people are aware as you see them.
And the bus operators are right behind you on this because they wish that there was greater clarity.
They don't know either.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, you've been very patient with your hand up. Lindy, over to you. You're on mute at the moment.
Hi. I'd just like to say a word about the 28 service from Minehead to Taunton, because we don't get mentioned very often. I know that Jose just mentioned it, so that's great. But the problem we have, and the local people also, oh, we're never going to go on the bus on a Monday or a Friday, is because of Butlins. We had the changes in April, and then for some reason they were changed again in June. Because they introduced this new X28, which is supposed to serve Butlins, and it doesn't go through Minehead town and it doesn't go through Watchet. So it's still bad. The changes in June didn't make any difference at all. Watchet still get less of a service because that service avoids it. And obviously the town is worse off because that service avoids the town centre in Minehead. This morning I was on the bus coming back from Minehead. I live in Carhampton, which is 4 miles east. And it was so full, it was something like the 10:53 from Minehead. It was so full with Butlins people and suitcases and prams and kids and everything else that half a dozen of us, including the disabled lady in her pushy support wheelchair thing, we all had to get off at one stop so that people could get off behind us, and we all had to get back on. And I don't know why they think the bus isn't financially viable, because they are always full or very nearly full, both directions. And what else was I going to say? So I don't know what's going to happen with the timetable change in September, but we don't need less buses, we need more. And the problem I have is trying to recruit other users within the village, because there's loads of people like me. I mean, I'm not old, I'm not disabled, I'm not a student. I do have access to a car, but I just don't like, for environmental reasons, to use it. It's a lot less hassle going by bus because I don't have to pay parking charges, etc., etc. But you try and get more people to use the bus, but it's not reliable. They go straight past because they're full. There are instances where the driver has said to people, are you a tourist or a local? And you say you're a local, say, well, you're not getting on then. And it is so bad for the local people. I don't know. He's banging their head against a brick wall trying to encourage more people to use it because they say, no, we just can't rely on it. Sorry, that's me finished.
Well, I will raise that because I'm meeting First South on Wednesday. That's useful to know. I will.
Peter, it's David Redwell. I mean, I've got a vested interest in this, and I do work for a Reba group. We run cross-country trains. The problem is there's contracts, as David Nordy will tell you, with First Great Western and cross-country trains onto the 28 for passengers flows. And we've got to find an answer to this. a fleet of new electric buses from Taunton to Minehead will cost the Department for Transport somewhere in the region of £2 million, £3 million. The answer, as David will tell you, and let him speak, is probably to put the rail line back in use for charter trains for Butlins on a Friday and on a Friday, am I got it right? And a Saturday, rather than just trying to throw more and more money at the buses when Somerset Council own that railway line, and it has been used before on 7 different occasions over 7 or 8 years to do exactly that. Because the DFT is looking at the cost of buying buses for Minehead to just carry these rail passengers and going, there might be a cheaper and easier solution using a 4-car train, Peter. So David's the expert on this, but I do know DFT are interested in looking at solutions. But those buses you keep talking about, and we got those 3 street lights, are actually costing millions of pounds. It's the electric ones. So Electrify Minehead Depot, but First Group's not paying for it. It won't be at the shareholder meeting on the trust me, on the 26th this month. It'll be the DFT that will pay for all of that. So Mike Rigby was working on a plan for that corridor. We just need to find the solution for that corridor, and it's a road rail solution, not a pure bus solution. National Express also have through tickets to Minehead, so that is a big problem, and those tickets are sold nationally on all the national rail network.
Electric buses, because spending all those millions on electrifying it, the service is not reliable. I'd rather they spent the money making it reliable first, and I'm all for green things and electric this, that and the other, but make it reliable first, and then you can talk about greenifying it.
Okay.
As Peter mentioned, 12 million is being paid by First compared to 2 million by the Department of Transport. So First are contributing most of it.
Yeah, but it's not working.
Alan Peters.
Yeah, I'll mention that first, the 28, but it's not why I have my hand up. I cannot understand how, when we had step entrance buses, we have 13-foot, 8-inch high buses that could go under Taunton Railway Bridge, and now we got low floor buses without a step. We can't get under 13-foot 10, so they can't go under Taunton Railway Bridge. And I have mentioned it at other forums. I'm sure that if First, with their power, and now they've got the electric buses coming, actually talk to somebody, they could get one low height double deckers specifically for that route. And up till now they've not been buying new buses for Buses of Somerset because they can't afford it, but now they are investing in it. Then invest in something that's actually useful and will deal with some of the problem. But I actually put my hand up to speak about roadworks in Bristol, and Lucy used to do it with Baines. I get regular reports of every roadwork from the council because they give licenses for road closures and roadworks. And because I'm a statutory body as an operator, I get every roadworks. Unfortunately, that amounts to about 15 emails a day, which I then have to look through to see if they affect me. And First West of England have actually got a manager whose sole job it is to organise diversions and roadwork situations. I wondered if you could be put on the list as a body, as a statutory body, so that Somerset, who presumably do the same thing, they're supposed to, I think, actually statutorily tell you what roadworks are going to take place. And then at least you've got something to actually work from. And then you can disseminate it to the members.
Yeah. I mean, some do regularly send out information, certainly to parish councils, and I'm sure to bus operators. In particular case of the A36, we have the hour, that's the Broome to Bath service. The local authority which is responsible for where the roadworks are is Wiltshire, and so the two concerned authorities are Somerset and Baines, but because the actual roadworks happen to fall just inside of Wiltshire, it was Wiltshire Council, and so I think the information about it was slow to to put out. Val Fox, I think, has got her hand up.
Hi, yes, hello, Peter, everybody.
Hi.
First, thank you, Peter, for all you're doing. I mean, you work tirelessly, and I don't know if anybody else has thanked you, but I'd like to, from Norton St Philip. So well done for what you do, and keep going. Yeah, my grouch has, as you probably remember, been about bus timetables specifically, as well as everybody else's problem, of course. But they're not regular, they're not frequent. We have to accept that, obviously, in these straitened times. But the main problem we've got is that in Norton St Philip, we want to encourage people onto buses. You've suggested making timetables. We've done that. In April, we made a huge effort to get timetables on the bus stops themselves, because D2 aren't doing it for us. We're on the D2 and D2, that's all, route. And in our parish news, and that was easy for us. And also we did a house drop, which the parish council paid for. That's all fine. The two problems we have was that the timetables for April didn't come through to us until 5 days after the new timetable had started. So we had to research our own. We happened to have somebody in the village who's very au fait with database work, and he did a fabulous timetable for us that he got from bus.org, not from First Bus. It was also compounded by the fact that Norton St Philip wasn't included in any of their timetables for reasons that you and I know we've both tried to get them to do, and they still haven't. Whether they will in September, I don't know. So our problems were that we will be gladly prepared to put the timetables out, but we need them, we need to have them in order to do that. And we need them to include Norton St Philip. Otherwise, it's a huge amount of effort on our part to pretty well invent the timetable, which I think is really going too far for a user group and a village. I mean, I really don't understand why the buses themselves, bus companies themselves, don't make any effort to sell their business like any normal company would. But since we have to do it for them, they could at least make it easy for us by preparing it for us so that we can then disseminate it for them. Those are my points. Is there any way of asking First Bus very nicely if they can give us the timetables in enough time for us to let the village see them and to include our village in them? That would be a real bonus.
The problem is that Norton St Philip isn't a timing point, and that's why it's not coming up on their printed timetables that they do produce. You can reveal the Norton St Philip times if you go to all stops, but I will continue to pressurize them to show you on the easily accessible timetable. The thing I do have to warn you about is, as from August the 12th, when the A36 closes, Norton St Philip and the D2, which goes through Norton St Philip, is going to be very much delayed. It's mind-blowing the impact it's going to have on that route through Norton and Hinton. It's not as though it's an easy route for buses to get along anyway, which isn't what you want to hear, but it's certainly not what I wanted to hear either. Why this is happening for 6 months, closing one of the major roads in Somerset, it's just unbelievable. Jevon, you've waited an awful long while. Jevon Smith.
Hi. Just to say that socialising is a very hot affair we have at the moment in any ways we can look at. Like, for example, enthusiasts are suffering from copyrights and when we look at timetabling, who is reliable and on what source is being sourced from in today's modern society. I mean, there was an affair recently came up for those who didn't see on Facebook where a source of information was brought up with Great Western Railway, and that was not official on an offer. Now, who could confirm that? Nobody, other than themselves, as they are the authority of their travels and who can affiliate in that instance with the railway bodies. Now, in busing, we don't have that. In weak ways, and I can give one example at the moment where ITSO are not engaging with Transport for London on concession fares. Now, where we've got at the moment, Somerset are probably on their list of allowed authority concession fares, but not a North East Somerset fare I am in. Yes, that's true. And it was admitted by Transport for London officials in an email to a friend of mine that you can actually use your authority pass of English national concession in London. I expect it's happening with a North Somerset one as well, owing to London thinking that North East Somerset and North Somerset are also in Somerset, and this needs to be arose along with several operators, and I brought this up with Stagecoach probably in Perth officing, and socialising is a very hot affair government need to tackle in lots of ways, especially to our public transport.
Thanks,
And an update on our roadworks also at Whitchurch Village to Wells duties, right? This is every Wells journey, like Alan has risen. They have done major gas work this week on our doorstep, can you believe? So it has delayed every 172, 374, 375, 376, knocking into the 171s, 173s, 174s, and onto possibly 77s. So you must beware of every delay, and there will be further delay this month into Mags Lane, causing diversions to Ridgeway Lane on a 73 in Bristol. Okay.
Thank you, Jevon. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's joined our call this evening. I think at one stage we've got 40 on the call. Alan.
While we're talking about roadworks, is there any news on the A39 Wells to Glastonbury closure? We had it delayed because originally it was going to be closed on the weekend of the Bath and West show. Then it was delayed until after Glastonbury Festival. But I understood it was supposed to be taking place now-ish. But I've not seen anything about it. So I don't know if there's any update on that at all.
We've got one in Whitchurch.
Thank you. Sorry, Javen. Thank you, Alan,
Rosa.
for bringing that up. Thank you, Alan, for bringing that up. It has been delayed until next spring, but we don't know a date for it yet.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Thank you very much. Okay, well,
Peter,
yes.
Peter, just a message from Barry West, who's not on the call, to remind everybody there's industrial action on all First South services under the licence First South West, which covers the depots in Cornwall, including the closure of Helston, Devon, including Plymouth and Exeter, and the Somerset depots at Minehead, Yeovil and Taunton, and buses will not run or any express service provided by First on the 23rd and 24th of this month. That is when the RMT, Short Southern Rail Union, are going on strike again with their bus division over pay negotiations with First Group PLC.
I did mention that earlier, David. Thank
Right,
you.
sorry.
Thank
To remind everybody at the fine end of the meeting, that was all. That is very important. That, and anybody wants to understand where we're going on regional government, Weckham meets on the 22nd for scrutiny and the 24th with North Somerset. Sorry, 26, Peter, I got it wrong. 26. And it will discuss the regional plans that have come from the government at their board meetings. So you're going to learn more at those meetings. And First Group's AGM, for anybody who's got shares in it, is on the 26th at the end of this month at the Westminster Conference Centre at 2:30 on the Friday afternoon. Cheers.
Thanks,
I
David.
missed them this year's.
And as David has mentioned earlier, we better listen all to which we would have been doing anyway, to the King's speech, which happens tomorrow, when we should hear a bit more about the transport policy of the new government. We live in hope. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us this evening. It's been a good turnout. Hopefully you found it useful. We'll probably try and have another update meeting in about 3 months' time. But if you've got any issues, you can always drop us an email to somersetbuspartnership@gmail.com. And if you feel you can help us, you could join one of our bus groups or come and help us on one of the bus stalls, which are always very entertaining. I go to quite a few, not as many as Rose, but I go to a fair few. Do get in touch and let us know if you could join us. So thank you very much indeed. And we'll be in touch. See you on the buses.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Under the microscope.
Good night, all.
To see whether the bacteria has attacked it.
Good night. Good night, Rosa. See you and David in the morning. North Somerset Council.
Village, and we can make out the blood vessels which